So true.
Yeah.
You know, the way he was wired.
You want to say something,
You know,
Marty?
sure. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's amazing. You know, we always sit there in the mat, listen to Guru Inosanto's Sage, and he says you can take as many lessons as you want from a Michael Jordan. You'll learn a lot of things about the game, but you're no Michael Jordan, and your attributes are going to be different, and your gift is going to be different than his, and you should be attentive to that and start developing what you have to the best you can, and let that expression come out on your own terms and put your own signature on it.
I had conversations with both Steve Muhammad and Mike Stone and Dave Hebler on Bruce Lee. And, you know, there was always the comment, Bruce was incredibly fast. I think from what they told me, he was more intuitive on how to react. And that's why it was so fast, because he saw the opening presented to him and therefore he acted on it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, speed deals with other elements as well, though. One being, and the main element being isolation. We as humans are predicting always 10 seconds into the future. And so when you get somebody that can isolate their hands or their body or their movements so well that there's no telegraphic feature to that, then you take away the ability to be predictory with regards to what they're going to do next. And so, you know, that's why one of the things that I harp on all the time is actually telegraphing. Do not, you know, we work on non-telegraphic motion. It gives the appearance of speed because there was no precursor to the motion, right? There was no subconscious precursor to the motion to trigger that they moved. It was just boom, here it is, right? Now there is an element of actual physical speed, but there's also the element of removing that telegraph, in my opinion. Gentlemen,
you know, it's funny, we talk about speed. For a very big man, Ed Parker was incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And I only wish I had seen him when he was younger, because he had to be even faster than that.
I have a story about that.
Go ahead, Lee, tell us it.
I reconnected Ed Parker and John McSweeney in my school in Chicago way back in the very early 80s. And as Mr. Parker was teaching, I was standing on the side with Mr. McSweeney, and I said, what do you think? Has he slowed down at all? He says, he's just as fast as he was in the late 50s.
Wow.
Just, yeah. So
he was
what you
incredibly intuitive too about adapting. I mean, I did a seminar and Frank threw me out there like the bait, and I closed my eyes. I had to. I'm sorry, folks. You know, better than watch, just feel the pain, not watch it happen. You know, Marty's laughing. He knows what I'm talking about.
Well, there was a lot
like
we went through with Mr. Labonte and Mr. Kelly. I mean, geez, your head would rattle when you get back in line. They say, hey, did you see that? I said, no, I didn't see a thing. There's two of them up there of each of those guys now.
You know, Frank Trejo was incredibly fast, intuitive. I mean, he had amazing skills, but you know what? His control, I find it hard to find anybody that was as good at that as he was, because you felt it, but he never hurt you. So did he ever work on you, Todd?
Mr. Trejo? No.
Uh-oh.
No, I've felt the control of Mr. Rainey control of Mr. Rainey.
Yeah, those guys, I mean, when you get that proficient at what they're doing, it's something to be amazed by. Let's go in there. So how do we improve body mechanics, Lee? How do we actually try to up the level on these people, young students coming in? They're listening to us right now. We've given them an overview of it. But how do we improve that? What do they need to focus on?
Okay. First thing that comes to mind is a saying from the Chinese martial artists, which is, if you have a problem with your hands, it's probably rooted in your feet. So you need to make sure your foot position is correct. Now you've got to have a grounding in some of the basic ideas. Like, we teach you how to make a compact unit. We tell you how to have a bracing angle. And then you need this coach, this teacher to say, no, you need to work, this foot needs to turn like this. That knee needs to do this, the hip needs to do that, you need to breathe. And of course, they just go, there's maybe a little bit too much at first, but those things have to be drilled in because it's primary instruction. It's what's got to last them for the rest of their martial art career and the rest of their lives, because these movements will translate over into other. They want to get
I've seen several of Todd's students, and he showed me some footage. Todd, how do we improve it to make our students a better martial artist?
Well, I think the single most important thing, one, is the teacher has to understand how the structure works and what it's about and the relevance of it. That's where you start. Two, I mean, it depends on the climate that you're teaching in, whether it be commercial, at the house, whatever, and whether you're taking the time or making the time to constantly remind the beginning student of what a neutral bow is and what their weight distribution should be, and how, all of these things have to continue, not just at white, not just at yellow, not just at orange, but it has to be a constant, almost like the nagging mother, fix your feet, fix your distribution, bend your knees. Your forward bow is what's the weight distribution of forward bow, what's weight distribution. When you draw back to a cat stance, is what's your weight distribution. Mr. Zaninovich's boys behind him playing games there.
I'm gonna beat him silly in about 2 seconds.
Have some training. So I mean, it does. I love this, what Mr. Wedlake started with if you got a problem with your hands, it's probably in your feet. I mean, you can win a fight with your feet, with just your feet. If you have the proper footwork and stance changes and you move at the proper time, you can win the fight with your feet. You just, but if you don't have any of that, it's not going to happen with your hands or your feet or the both of them together.
Marty, how do we improve the body mechanics? How do you instill that into the new students?
I like to take it and using that old adage, speed kills. Keep it slow. Let them feel the motions throughout that movement, whether it be like Mr. Durgan said earlier, take them into the techniques and have them go slow and feel it. I'm a firm believer in that. Let them feel the body mechanics, and it's got to come under the tutelage of a qualified instructor. Not just any instructor. It needs to be a qualified instructor to really get that person, that student, to become the best they can be and get him to feel the motions of those mechanics and then start pressuring it a little bit more, whether you're pushing on it or have them resist it a little bit. I think there's a myriad of different ways to improve them as far as that goes. But I think that the easiest thing I would say to it would just be Tai Chi style, and feel the body mechanics, working the body as one unit from the ground up.
Do you spend any time removing the visual aspect of it? And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a second. When we were in Pasadena, sometimes Trejo would turn the lights off and we'd be there against each other. And so we were in the dark dealing with this stuff. Now that can be dangerous, especially when it comes to punches and kicks. But
that was a LeBounty special. That's a LeBounty special. We'd have midnight sparring after we went and eat Chinese food. And if we were lucky, he'd light one candle. And that was probably the one he was going to church with and praying for us so we didn't kill each other. So yes. And then we'd blindfold each other. We do blindfold techniques too when we came up.
Frank actually, he got into glow things. He put the glow things on your wrist and your feet.
Last Dragon.
And it was like, whoa, that's a little freaky, dude, to see that stuff flying around in the air with no lights. And you're going,
yeah, pretty cool though.
Man, I gotta have
with a trace, probably had a trace path like a tracer out of a M60, yeah.
Well,
that's pretty cool.
Really shooting them out there, Lee. I can see, one time he did this just to screw with us. He turned on light. We put the things on our hands and our feet. And then what he did is he grabbed like an old stick or something and he put it on the end of the stick and he's waving it out in front of us, but he come up along and slap us in the head with his hand. What the hell was that?
Sounds like good times.
You know,
It was a good time. So
well, that was only after he's had a couple of cervezas. So that was, the fun. We can have a lot of fun at this, but the essential thing I'm learning from talking to you gentlemen is that we're looking at a way to improve our students and our foundation, our basics, and to understand how this all connects. And Parker was right. It would take lifetimes in succession to understand what we're doing here. At least I am grateful that I have you three on here as well to be able to explore this and to develop. Final thoughts, Lee, before we end.
I recommend picking up an anatomy book by Frank Netter, Netter, and it was given to me by a surgeon. The book that goes with it is Frank Netter's anatomy coloring book. And he gave me that. He said, this is what they use in medical schools. So it will get you to stay between the lines and you look at all of these, the joints and how they operate. And you get a much better sense of what's going on inside when you have a good reference like that.
Marty, your final thoughts on that, on this?
I think it's going to be, getting the student, and you can't make them want something that they wish they could be at, but I think you can give them the inspiration to really look at getting the maximum efficiency out of their bodies and looking and seeing the feel of it when they start getting that Tai Chi type style when they're doing it, and I search out qualified instructors, and it doesn't mean you have to stay with them the first time. I test it out, make sure you're going to like it, and it's going to benefit you on your journey.
Boy, I'm looking forward to the time I can have you, Lee, and Todd all together in a seminar in front of a group of people to open their eyes on this, because it really does help a lot to understand. There's much. Final thoughts there, Mr. Durgan.
Well, first of all, I'm going to pick up Frank Netter's book, if I can find it, because that sounds pretty interesting. I have personally have my own anthology of stuff, and I hang in the dojo. I hang up a site called Bar Charts. They actually have a bunch of pre-laminated poster type foldouts of anatomy and all kinds of different stuff. It doesn't sound like they would have what you want, but they have a lot of medical and anatomy charts that you can hang on the wall. It's laminated, so you can go and draw on it with a sharp eraser, a dry erase marker, and have a little lesson there right there in the dojo. But it's been said a lot, the qualified instructor, and it's a hard thing sometimes, being in our position where now, everybody here has got a number of decades under their belt to be able to assess whether that person is qualified or not. But for the beginner, all they know is the guy's got a black belt or he's got a dojo, he must be a qualified teacher. Teacher versus instructor, big thing. But anyway, ultimately you got to do a lot of research too. And if you're a black belt and you haven't been researching it, well, shame on you.
I'm looking at this in the Big Red Book. There were certain ranks or they had the diagrams of the and am I right on that, Lee? Except we never saw them. I mean, they were there, but how often were they brought to our attention? I think it was something that was overlooked.
I believe those are somewhat the same ones that are in is it book 1 or 2 in Infinite Insights.
So pick up those books, folks. At least you'll have some relationship to Kenpo and why it's important. And then you can sit down and explore this in greater depth with, Mr. Wedlake or Zaninovich or Mr. Durgan. It's relatively important that you understand there's more complexity than just working on focus mitts or kicking a big heavy bag or something, or going to tournaments. There's something more to this life, especially in our Kenpo world. And the beautiful thing is that the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame educational video series is addressing the educational aspect of our art. Parker wanted us to be thinking martial artists. So we address the physical, we're dealing with the intellectual and the spiritual things when we come together collectively here. We bring, a unified mindset to think about this and explore it. And it is mind-boggling, actually, because there's so much there. Boy, it's amazing. And thank you very much. So with no further ado, I want to say thank you very much, Senior Master of the Arts, Lee Wedlake. You always add a lot to it. I look forward to your new book. There are other books that are out there. Folks, go on to Amazon or contact him directly. I know Master Marty Zaninovich is working on his stuff as well. And I'm very excited about when he finally decides to publish those books. He's going to be talking about the use of knives, and that will relate to all of his teaching. And finally, there's a second book coming out from Master Durgan. And he didn't give me the title of it, but I'll tell you right now, any one of these three men, just spending quality time with them is a real blessing. So thank you very much, gentlemen, on behalf of the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame educational video series. My name is Paul Casey. Thank you very much. Salute.